So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the final session of the IDDF Day 1. So, in this session, we will be featuring Asian frontiers in GI endoscopy. And then we have a few international experts who will take us through the latest development in GI endoscopy. So, first off, I would like to introduce my dear friend, Vinay Deer. Vinay I've known him for many years now. We have, through our collaborations in the Asian US group, we have worked together very closely. Vinay is an international expert in interventional endoscopy. He is also a very dedicated educator. So today he will be talking to us about the future of US guided interventions. So thank you, Vinay.
Hello, many thanks, Anthony, for that kind introduction. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Yes.
Okay, so the topic that is given to me is a future of interventional EUS. As you all must be aware, interventional EUS has evolved greatly over the past two decades, starting with the first EUS guided hepaticogastrostomy and then taking from there. The good thing is that EUS or interventional EUS is a wonderful mix of principles of therapeutic endoscopy, principles of ultrasound, and principles of interventional radiology. It borrows from all these three disciplines. So while that is a blessing, it also creates issues in the sense that when techniques mature, they have to compete with similar techniques which are already available in these three fields. We will talk about that later. Last decade has been very, very good for interventional EUS. There have been a number of very good studies and acceptance has gone up, and it is causing paradigm shift in management of many disorders. So this was a review article we wrote almost 6 years back, trying to classify the therapeutic endoscopy ultrasound indications. They remain more or less the same with some changes: ductal drainage, biliary drainage and pancreatic duct drainage, drainage of fluid collections, pancreatic fluid collections, perirectal collections, cancer-directed therapy, alcohol ablation, radiofrequency ablation, etc., and then others. So some of these others have become more prominent in the past few years. So now we have a discipline, EUS-guided vascular therapy in itself. You have very, very good studies, which we will discuss. So it is ongoing. New indications are getting added, and really an exciting field to be in right now. When we talk of the future, future doesn't arise from emptiness. There are building blocks, there is a past, and from that, we go into the future carefully. So if you look at any technique, forget interventional EUS, it basically boils down to 3 points. Collection of scientific evidence, innovations in technology, and finally, utilization in community practice. So the future will be decided by utilization in community practice, and we would love to see the interventional EUS techniques being commonplace, just like gastroscopy, colonoscopy, polypectomy, and other things. But before that, we need to see the first two parts: collection of scientific evidence and innovations in technology. Now, for most of the techniques, actually number two becomes number one. First, there is an innovation, and if the innovation is good enough to cause a change in management paradigms, then it takes over, and very often scientific evidence is collected later. That is true of ERCP. That is true of surgical techniques like laparoscopic cholecystectomy. You had a technique which was immediately accepted without much scientific evidence. And then, of course, good scientific evidence came much, much later. EUS has come at a time where there are already many competing technologies. So the going has been difficult for EUS, while it has been easy to prove that interventional EUS procedures are effective and safe. The third step, that is, how does it compare with the other available techniques? And mind you, these techniques are available for several decades, are well documented. So that is the crux before it starts getting utilized in community practice, and that will decide the future of interventional EUS. So what evidence do we have so far for pancreatic fluid collection drainage? We have a level 1 evidence, biliary drainage and celiac neurolysis also level 1 evidence, and we have level 2 evidence for pancreatic duct drainage and EUS guided gastroenterostomy. We have level 3 evidence for radiofrequency ablation, variceal coil and glue, and perirectal abscess drainage. There are many other techniques, but I have not taken them for shortage of time. And also, I will not discuss celiac neurolysis much for the shortage of time. So we have level 1 evidence. So automatically, we should think that this should translate into clinical practice, but things are not so easy. Uh, in the last decade, industry has started taking note of the progress made by interventional EUS, and we have had many good innovations in technology. Most of them are not perfect, but they are great improvements over the previous. So when we started interventional EUS procedures, the only unique equipment we had, which belonged only to EUS, was the EUS guided FNA needle, the 19 gauge needle. But over the past decade, a variety of EUS specific stents and accessories have become available, and that portends a very, very good trend for the future. The companies know that these are viable procedures, and so new accessories are coming. The third point, what is being utilized in community practice now? So this is from my personal knowledge. There is no publication regarding this. Pancreatic fluid collection drainage is increasingly being used. Many of my friends and colleagues in community practice are doing PFC drainage in community. Biliary drainage and celiac neurolysis, though they have level 1 evidence, are being used sparsely, not being used very commonly, and we will discuss why that is the problem. Then, of course, you have pancreatic duct drainage, EUS, GJ, RFA, variceal coil and glue, and perirectal abscess drainage. These are still being used at high-end institutions where research is going on, and that is understandable. So what we are lacking is well-trained endoscopists in the community, and we do not know the cost effectiveness. So ultimately, cost effectiveness of interventional EUS procedures will determine how it stands compared to the radiology procedures or other endoscopy procedures. That will determine the acceptance of interventional EUS. So we have these procedures with level 1 evidence. We will briefly discuss all of them, PFC drainage and EUS BD, and see what's going on there. So we know that PFC EUS guided approach is a choice for a decade now. Plastic stents are okay for pseudocyst. We know that lumen opposing stents allow for necrosectomy when needed, and permanent indwelling stents may not be needed. So these are some of the issues which have been clarified, but we don't know that is LAMS necessary in all cases. One of the major issues is necrosectomy. So LAMS came in with the promise that necrosectomy is possible, but it has proved to be pretty difficult in practice. We need much better necrosectomy devices. And of course, we need cost effectiveness studies as to which is better. So this is a study from Shyam, a very, very highly quoted study from gastroenterology published last year, comparing laparoscopy versus PFC drainage. And it shows that complications are significantly higher in the surgical arm. Now, so here I want to make a point. Randomized controlled trials are level 1 evidence, but when they do not percolate to clinical practice, when they do not translate to clinical practice, usually there is an issue. So if you look at these results in detail, you see here, the only significant difference is enteral pancreatic cutaneous fistula was significantly higher in surgical arm. Now, those of you who work in high-end institutes will know that this complication is not a major complication, does not occur with such high frequency. All the rest of the complications are more or less the same in all the groups. So then there is this another randomized study published by my friend Pramod Garg last year. And you see here, enterocutaneous fistula is 3%. This is again a randomized trial. And this shows no difference at all in the complication rates. If at all, the infection drainages are more in the endoscopic drainage group. This is to be understandable. This is understandable. Endoscopy arm may have more infection. So these results appear more logical. So we need better, larger studies. Similarly, disconnected pancreatic duct syndrome, we do not know so much about it. We need to know much more. There was a study in 2007 from Brussels, randomized study again, which suggested that permanently indwelling pancreatic stents should always be placed. Otherwise, there will be high recurrence. That study had many flaws if you read it. And now we are having data. So this is what we did, MRCP and ERCP in all these patients, and we found these types. And if you look at these types, this is the only type where probably a pancreatic duct stenting or indwelling stent might help. The other areas may not really have any advantage of additional stent placement. And this has been shown by us in a prospective study and by my friend Sandeep's group in a very large retrospective study. You see here, frequency of disconnected duct in both studies is very high, but recurrence is pretty low. So disconnected pancreatic duct syndrome always doesn't mean that this patient will have high recurrence rates. So this needs to be revisited. This is another study by Shyam, my friend, published in Gut. The outcomes are again controversial. They show that lumen opposing metal stents and plastic stents are equivalent for walled-off necrosis. However, if you go into the details, stent-related adverse events, 32.3% in lumen opposing metal stents. Those of you who are placing these stents know that the adverse events are not so high. And that is why, even though we have a level 1 evidence, I think evidence needs much more clarity. What about EUS guided biliary drainage? I'll quickly go through. We are lacking appropriate stents and accessories. I think we have very, very good stents for EUS BD, but they are not ideal. We need stents which are easier to place, much easier to place. We need larger comparative studies. And of course, the efficacy in Heiler blocks, and we need to know what is the cost efficacy in EUS BD. So at my place, doing an EUSBD is much more costly than ERCP because the stents are costlier. It is probably much more costlier than doing a percutaneous drainage also because I cannot place plastic stents with EUSBD. So have we discarded plastic stents prematurely? All these issues need to be discussed. So these are the comparisons. The same issue comes again. Small numbers, 26, 56, 15, 15, 33, 34. This is relatively decent, but we know that if you want to really compare, you need large multi-center comparative trials. If you show equivalence of the two procedures, nothing will change. Things will remain the same. Then, of course, we have procedures needing more evidence. There, things are straightforward. You need to collect more multi-center comparative evidence. These are the studies for EUS guided gastrojejunostomy, a great procedure. We all know it has a very bright future, but it needs more evidence. You see the number of cases, small number of cases, good results. There are multiple techniques, so which technique is better? That needs to be clarified yet. What about vascular therapy, EUS guided treatment of gastric fungal varices? We are all very excited by this procedure. Very, very good procedure. We know it should have a future in endoscopy. So this is a big study which shows more than 99% technical success and complete obliteration in about 93%. Very low recurrence rates. But this is a retrospective study. We need prospective studies. And we need to know whether this is superior to the simple method of endoscopy and glue. So those comparative studies are needed before this procedure becomes commonplace in community. Radio frequency ablation, I believe, has a lot of promise. We need many studies before we show it to be a promise, not only in small neoplasms like insulinoma. My friend Sandeep studied here 3 patients. We need larger studies to show its efficacy and safety. But it's a procedure which has a future. This is a new portal pressure gradient measurement, great use in hepatology, potential great use. Simple technique should be routinely used in all departments. So we are looking forward to more studies for it to become commonplace. These are some important things in oncology. Acquisition of potent venous circulating tumor cells. You know, these are important to see the metastatic potential of a tumor, and you can easily go into the portal vein, collect some blood, and then study the circulating tumor cells, and you will know whether the tumor has metastatic potential or not. So my conclusions are, interventional US has taken rapid strides in past decade. Many procedures are showing great promise. But currently, we need more evidence for most of these indications, and industry support is essential for innovations in technology needed for these successful techniques. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vinay, for your excellent talk.